Okay, so we're diving into Nano Nuclear Energy Inc. You know, the company making waves with those micronuclear reactors.
Yeah.
We got their Form 10K fresh off the press,
Oh, nice.
which is their annual report for those who aren't familiar. It's basically a roadmap of their business ambitions and, let's face it, their risks too.
What's really cool about going straight to the source like this is that we get their unfiltered vision, right?
Yeah.
Plans laid out in black and white for investors.
Exactly. No media spin, just the straight facts. So why should you care about this company that's pre-revenue and making tiny nuclear reactors? I mean, these microreactors are a hot topic in the energy world. A lot of people think they could be incredibly efficient and a super portable power source. Imagine bringing clean energy to like remote areas, disaster zones, places that are hard to reach with those traditional power grids.
And this company is so young.
Yeah.
I mean, just founded in February of 2022.
Oh.
So this deep dive is like a sneak peek into what the future of energy could look like. By the end of this, we'll not only know what they're doing, but why it matters. Are they on the cusp of something big? Or is it all just hype?
Right.
That's what we're going to find out.
Let's unpack Nanonuclear's grand plan. What is their vision?
Well, they're aiming to be a one-stop shop for micronuclear.
Yeah.
Everything from the reactors themselves to fuel processing.
Okay.
And even transportation.
Wow.
It's a pretty intriguing vertical integration strategy, right?
Yeah.
They want to control the whole process.
That's a big undertaking.
Huge. And it could be a game changer because it would give them such a massive advantage in a market that relies so heavily on external suppliers.
So they want a piece of the whole pie.
A whole thing.
Not just a slice.
Yeah.
But they haven't actually sold anything yet.
Not yet. They're pre-revenue. It's all about potential at this point.
Okay, so let's talk about the heart of their business.
Yeah.
These microreactors, they've got two main models that they're developing, right?
Mm-hmm.
ZEUS and ODIN.
Yeah. Exactly. And they're designed for different power outputs and applications. Think of ZEUS as the workhorse.
Yeah.
Providing that steady, reliable source of power.
Okay.
While ODIN is more flexible, able to ramp up and down quickly to meet those changing demands.
Interesting. And what about this NRC standard design certification they're going for?
Oh, that's smart.
What is that?
It's like getting pre-approval for their reactor design from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission.
Okay.
If it can get that, it makes it so much easier for their customers to get their own licenses to actually operate the reactors.
So less red tape, faster deployment.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. But actually building these things, even though they're micro, they can't be easy.
Oh, it's a massive undertaking.
Yeah.
And not just because the technology is complex, but also because of all the regulatory hurdles.
Oh, I bet.
And then there's the whole public perception thing.
Right.
Nuclear energy, even on a micro scale, still has that, baggage that comes with it. So nanonuclear is going to have to work hard to address those concerns.
For sure. And speaking of baggage, these reactors need special fuel, right?
Yeah.
Something called HLE.
Right. HALEU, high-assay, low-enriched uranium. This is key to their whole strategy.
Okay.
It allows for smaller reactor cores and longer refueling cycles.
Okay.
So these microreactors could be even more efficient and cost-effective.
Makes sense. But they're not just relying on somebody else to provide this fuel, are they?
Nope. They want to produce it and transport it themselves.
Oh.
Yeah. They even licensed a super secure container design. Basically, think of it as a high-tech vault on wheels.
Oh, wow.
Specifically to transport this HAU fuel.
Yeah.
Safely and efficiently. Get this, they're bringing in former UPS execs.
Yeah.
To help with the logistics.
Wow. So they are serious with this fuel thing.
Oh, yeah. They're aiming to become the main supplier of HALEU in North America, potentially servicing other microreactor companies, national labs, maybe even the Department of Energy.
Ambitious. It sounds like they're trying to build a whole ecosystem around these microreactors. But it's not just about the hardware, is it?
Right.
They're also offering consulting services.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
Well, it seems like they're really tapping into the growing demand for nuclear expertise.
Okay.
They offer a whole range of services, from site assessments to helping companies decarbonize their operations.
So they're not putting all their eggs in one basket.
Exactly.
If the reactors take a while to get off the ground, they can still generate revenue and build credibility through this consulting work.
Smart move.
Yeah.
And they've already snagged a key partnership.
Oh, really?
Yeah, with DigiHost Technology.
Okay.
To help decarbonize a power plant in New York.
Interesting.
This is a big deal because not only does it bring in revenue,
right,
it also gives them real-world experience and a showcase project to point to.
Okay, so they've got the reactors, the fuel, the transportation, the consulting. What about the brains behind all this? Who are the key players at Nanonuclear?
Well, the founder, Jiang Yu, is a major figure. He owns almost 29% of the company's stock,
Okay.
which gives him a lot of influence.
That is a significant chunk.
It is.
Do you think that raises any red flags about potential conflicts of interest? Could his decisions always be in the best interest of all the shareholders?
It's definitely something investors will want to keep an eye on.
Yeah.
It's good that they're transparent about this ownership structure in the 10K,
Yeah.
but it does raise questions about how those decisions are made and whose interests are being prioritized.
For sure. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room. Money developing this kind of cutting-edge technology can't be cheap.
You are absolutely right. Nanonuclear is going to need a lot of capital to make this vision a reality.
Hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah, hundreds of millions.
And they haven't made any money yet, so where's the money coming from?
Well, they've done some fundraising already,
Okay.
but they're going to need a lot more then. They're looking at a mix of equity financing, which means selling more stock,
Oh, okay.
and debt financing, which means taking on loans.
So dilution for existing shareholders is a real concern.
Absolutely. And they're also hoping to get some government grants.
Mm.
But that's never a sure thing.
Right. It sounds like there's a lot of financial risk involved.
There is. And that's not even considering all the other risks they've outlined in the 10K.
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about those. They're pretty upfront about the challenges they're facing, aren't they?
They are. They list a whole bunch of potential problems. Lawsuits, competition from bigger players in the energy market, cybersecurity threats. They even mention the possibility of natural disasters disrupting their operations.
And of course, there's the whole issue of public perception. Can they convince people that these microreactors are safe and reliable?
That's a big one. And it ties into their reliance on government support, which they highlight as a major risk factor.
Right. They're really banking on this new Advance Act to help streamline the nuclear industry.
Exactly. They believe that this legislation could be a game changer, making it easier and faster to get their reactors licensed and operational.
But what if it doesn't pass? Or what if it gets bogged down in bureaucracy? That seems like a pretty big gamble.
It is. And it highlights that Nanonuclear's success depends on a lot of factors that are outside of their control.
So even if their technology is sound and their business plan is solid, there are still a lot of things that could go wrong.
That's the reality of investing in a young company, especially in an industry as complex as nuclear energy.
Right.
There's a lot of potential upside,
Sure.
but also a lot of downside risk.
Okay, so we've got the big picture. Nanonuclear wants to revolutionize the energy industry with these microreactors, but they face a ton of challenges, not the least of which is convincing people that nuclear energy is safe and reliable. What are some of the other key things that jumped out at you from their 10K?
Well, one thing that caught my eye was their emphasis on intellectual property.
Okay.
They're really laser-focused on patents and licenses, especially when it comes to their HALEU transportation technology.
Why is that so important?
Well, remember how they're aiming to become the main supplier of HALEU in North America? Well, having those exclusive rights to this advanced transportation technology could give them a huge competitive advantage.
Okay.
They've even partnered with a German nuclear services company to optimize this system.
Wow.
So they're clearly serious about it.
Interesting. So they're not just building the reactors, they're creating the infrastructure to support the whole industry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it goes beyond transportation, too.
Really?
Yeah. They've also acquired intellectual property for a novel cooling pump technology.
Okay.
This is a critical component of any nuclear reactor.
Yeah.
And they're betting on this new tech to improve the efficiency and safety of their designs.
It's like they're assembling a toolkit of cutting-edge technologies.
And speaking of assembling,
Yeah.
they put together a pretty impressive executive advisory board.
Who's on this board?
We're talking heavy hitters here. Former military leaders, renowned scientists, experts in nuclear non-proliferation. We're talking people like General Wesley Clark, former NATO Supreme Allied Commander, and Dr. Robert Gallucci, who played a key role in negotiating nuclear arms control agreements.
Wow, that's some serious brain power.
It is.
What did they bring to the table?
They bring that deep industry knowledge, strategic guidance, and crucial connections to the company's management team. It's like having an all-star team of mentors on speed dial.
That definitely adds a lot of credibility to Nanonuclear.
For sure.
Especially given how young they are.
Right, and it shows that they're serious about building a company that's not just innovative, but also well-connected and strategically savvy.
Okay, so we've got the technology, the fuel, the transportation, the expertise. What about the regulations? That's a big deal in the nuclear industry, right?
Absolutely. And Nanonuclear goes into a lot of detail about this in their 10K. They're clearly aware of the stringent safety and environmental standards that they have to meet.
So how are they approaching this whole regulatory maze?
They've got a two-pronged strategy. The first is to navigate the process as efficiently as possible.
Okay.
That means engaging with regulators early on, being transparent,
Yeah.
and submitting those thorough applications.
Makes sense. What's the second prong?
Standardization.
Okay.
They're aiming for a standardized design that can be applied across multiple markets. Remember that NRC standard design certification we talked about?
Yeah.
If they can get that, it makes it so much easier for customers to get their own licenses because the basic design has already been vetted and approved.
So it's like a pre-approved blueprint that they can adapt for different locations and applications.
Exactly.
Smart. But even with a standardized design, obtaining permits and licenses can still be a long and costly process, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they have to demonstrate the safety and security of their reactors throughout their entire life cycle.
Wow.
From construction and operation
Yeah.
to decommissioning and waste disposal. There's a lot at stake both for them and for the communities where these reactors will be located.
That's a lot of responsibility. And it's not just about the reactors themselves, is it? They've also got to deal with regulations around their fuel processing and transportation businesses.
Oh, yeah. Handling nuclear materials comes with a whole other level of scrutiny.
I bet.
They're going to need licenses for their proposed HALEU fuel processing facility, and they have to meet all those strict transportation regulations, both domestically and internationally. It's a complex web of rules and requirements.
Okay, so we've talked about their vision, their technology, the risks they face, their regulatory strategy. Do you think they can actually pull this off?
It's hard to say for sure. Their 10K paints a picture of a company with a bold vision and a clear plan to achieve it. They're targeting a massive market with a potentially game-changing technology.
They've put together a talented team and secured some pretty impressive partnerships.
They have. But the risks are definitely undeniable.
Right.
They're a pre-revenue company operating in a highly regulated and capital-intensive industry.
Right.
There's a lot of execution risk and a lot of unknowns.
And their success hinges, at least in part, on things outside of their control, like government policy and public perception.
That's right. This deep dive has really highlighted the complexity of what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
It's like a high-stakes puzzle with many pieces that need to fall into place.
And what about their workforce? I mean, they're going to need a lot of skilled people to make this happen.
Oh, for sure. They emphasize in the 10K that their success depends on attracting and retaining top-tier talent.
Okay.
And they've already made some significant strides in this area. Their team boasts an impressive number of advanced degrees, including 17 PhDs.
That's a lot of brain power.
It is. And they're not stopping there.
Oh.
No. They're establishing a nuclear energy university program to develop a pipeline of skilled professionals.
Wow.
Yeah, they're partnering with academic institutions to provide students with hands-on experience and specialized training.
That's a smart move, especially considering the high demand for nuclear expertise.
It is, but there's also a potential vulnerability that they disclose in the 10K. Yeah, all of their executive officers, except for the founder, Zhang, are currently engaged as independent contractors.
Interesting. Why is that a potential problem?
It raises questions about the long-term stability of their leadership team.
Yeah.
Are these contractors fully committed to the company's success? What happens if they decide to move on?
That's definitely something to consider. Now let's get back to the money. They're going to need a lot of it, right?
A lot. Their 10K lays out their need for capital pretty clearly.
Yeah.
They've done some fundraising already, including a follow-on public offering in October of 2024 that brought in a significant chunk of change.
Okay.
But they're very clear that they'll need hundreds of millions more, either through equity or debt financing.
And that, of course, comes with the risk of dilution for existing shareholders.
Absolutely. They're also looking at government grants as part of their strategy.
Right.
Which can be a game changer if they can secure them.
Yeah.
But government funding is notoriously unpredictable.
It's a double-edged sword. It can provide a huge boost, but also create dependence on those political whims.
Exactly. And they're also facing a whole new set of challenges now that they're a publicly traded company.
Such as?
Well, they're subject to the reporting requirements of the Exchange Act and have to comply with the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, which adds significant legal and financial compliance costs.
So they need to invest in better internal controls and reporting systems.
They do.
And that's going to eat into their budget?
It will.
Oh.
And then there's the whole issue of cybersecurity.
Right.
They acknowledge the potential for threats, which is a concern for any company, but especially one operating in a sensitive industry like nuclear energy.
For sure. They're going to need to invest in some serious cybersecurity measures to protect their systems and data.
No way around it.
Right.
And they've got to be proactive because that threat landscape is constantly evolving.
Right.
Hackers are always finding new ways to exploit vulnerabilities.
It's a constant game of cat and mouse.
It is. And speaking of potential conflicts, remember, Zhejiang Yu's significant ownership stake in the company.
Yes, the almost 29% we talked about earlier.
Right. Well, the 10K specifically addresses this, acknowledging that his influence could potentially lead to conflicts of interest.
Right.
It's good that they're transparent about it.
Yeah.
But it's definitely something investors should consider.
Absolutely. So lots of potential, but also a lot of risks.
Yeah.
What else is in this 10K that we should be paying attention to?
Well, they disclose a partnership agreement with a company called LIS Technologies, Inc.
Okay.
And this partnership seems to be focused on joint R&D initiatives,
Okay.
particularly in the areas of deconversion and fuel fabrication.
So they're collaborating with another company to advance their technology and expand their reach.
Exactly. It's another example of their strategy to not go it alone. But as with any partnership,
Sure.
there are risks. They'll need to manage this relationship carefully to make sure that both companies' interests are aligned.
It's a delicate balancing act. Collaboration can be powerful, but it can also lead to conflicts and complications.
For sure. One thing that I've found particularly interesting was their Code of Business Conduct and Ethics.
Why is that so interesting?
It provides a glimpse into their company culture and their values. They emphasize honesty, integrity, and compliance with all applicable laws and regulations.
Which is especially important in an industry like nuclear energy where public trust is paramount.
Absolutely. They have a detailed insider trading policy to prevent employees from using confidential information for personal gain.
That's important for maintaining investor confidence.
Right. They also emphasize responsible financial reporting and maintaining accurate records. It seems like they're really trying to build a foundation of transparency and accountability.
Which, as you said, is essential for gaining public trust, especially when you're dealing with nuclear technology.
Right. And they're being proactive about potential conflicts of interest.
Okay.
They've established clear procedures for disclosure and recusal.
So they're taking corporate governance seriously.
They are.
That's a good sign.
It is. Now, circling back to their overall business strategy, they reiterate their goal of becoming a vertically integrated, technology-driven nuclear energy company.
Meaning they want to control that whole process from fuel production to reactor operation.
Exactly.
We talked about that earlier.
We did. But they go into more detail in the 10K about how they plan to achieve this. They highlight the importance of research and development, their efforts to secure that intellectual property, and their strategic partnerships.
It's a bold and ambitious strategy.
It is. But they're also realistic about the challenges. They specifically mention lawsuits, competition, and regulatory changes as major hurdles that they're going to need to overcome.
So they're not sugarcoating anything.
Not at all. And that's refreshing.
Yeah.
You know, they acknowledge the importance of public perception, and they're investing in efforts to demonstrate the safety and reliability of their technology. It's a delicate balancing act.
Right.
They need to convince investors that their vision is achievable,
Yeah.
but also be transparent about those potential downsides.
It's a lot of pressure, but the potential rewards are enormous.
They are.
I mean, if they can successfully navigate all these challenges,
Right.
they could become a leader in this clean energy revolution.
It's a story that's just beginning to unfold.
And speaking of unfolding, there's one element we haven't discussed yet. Their research and development activities.
Ah, yes. The lifeblood of any cutting-edge tech company.
Right.
They're very clear in the 10K.
Yeah.
All research and development costs related to product development are expensed as incurred.
Meaning they're investing heavily in innovation, but it's going to show up as a loss on their financial statements, at least for now, because they're pre-revenue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're playing the long game.
Right. They also highlight the regulatory complexities of transporting those nuclear materials.
Oh, yeah.
They're exploring various options, including using those NRC-certified transportation packages and adhering to international regulations.
A logistical puzzle.
Yeah.
With very high stakes.
It is. And remember those lawsuits they mentioned as a potential risk? Well, it turns out they're currently facing some legal action related to statements they've made since going public. Oh. What are those lawsuits about?
They don't go into a ton of detail.
Okay.
But they acknowledge that these lawsuits could damage their reputation and divert resources away from their core business.
So a legal headache they'll have to deal with.
Yeah, definitely. Another thing they mention are their plans for future acquisitions.
Acquisitions?
Yeah.
As in buying other companies?
Exactly. They're looking to acquire companies that complement their existing business lines, potentially expanding their capabilities and their market reach.
It's a classic growth through acquisition strategy.
It is.
But it's not without its risks.
Of course, integrating those different company cultures can be challenging and acquisitions can be expensive.
Right.
But if they can identify and integrate the right companies, it could significantly accelerate their growth.
So another potential gamble. They're really going all in on this vision, aren't they?
They are. And they're laying all their cards on the table in this 10K.
Yeah.
They even disclose some details about their stock options and compensation plans.
Because?
Well, because these plans are designed to attract and retain that top talent, which is crucial for any company.
Sure.
But especially for a startup like Nano Nuclear. But these plans can also lead to dilution for those existing shareholders.
Right.
It's a trade-off they'll need to manage carefully.
Rewarding employees is important.
Yeah.
But so is protecting the value of the company for investors.
For sure. And speaking of investors, they're very upfront about the fact that their success hinges, at least in part, on the new Dance Act.
We talked about that earlier, how they're hoping this legislation will streamline the nuclear industry.
Right. But they're also realistic about the fact that the act's impact remains uncertain.
So it's a wait-and-see situation.
It is.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about their customers. Who are they targeting with these microreactors?
Well, it seems like they're casting a pretty wide net. They mention utility companies, industrial facilities, even the military as potential customers.
Right. And they're smart to do so. Microreactors offer such a unique set of advantages. They're scalable, portable, and they can operate independently from the grid.
Right.
This makes them ideal for remote locations, disaster relief efforts, and even military bases.
They also highlight the growing demand for clean energy solutions driven by concerns about climate change and the need to reduce those carbon emissions.
Absolutely. Microreactors could play a significant role in this energy transition, providing a reliable, carbon-free source of power.
It's a compelling story.
It is.
But convincing potential customers to adopt this new technology will require a strong track record of safety and reliability.
Absolutely. It's all about building trust.
Yeah.
And demonstrating that clear economic benefit.
Right.
They need to prove that microreactors aren't just a good idea,
Right.
but a smart investment.
And they're not shying away from the challenges.
Right.
They specifically mention cybersecurity threats as a major concern.
Right. They recognize the need to protect their systems and data from hackers, especially given the sensitivity of nuclear technology.
It's a high-stakes game.
It is. They also highlight the potential for natural disasters and other catastrophic events that could disrupt their operations.
Yeah. A sobering reminder that even the best-laid plans can be upended.
Definitely. And then, of course, there are those regulatory complexities surrounding their nuclear fuel processing and transportation businesses.
Yeah, we talked about those earlier. It's a highly regulated industry with very strict standards.
It is. They're going to need to navigate a complex web of permits, licenses, and inspections. It's a bureaucratic marathon.
But it sounds like they're not running this marathon alone. They highlight their collaboration with national laboratories, including the Idaho National Laboratory and the Oak Ridge National Laboratory.
Yes, those partnerships are crucial. They give nanonuclear access to that world-class expertise and those state-of-the-art facilities,
Right.
which can help them to accelerate their research and development efforts.
It's a smart strategy to leverage the knowledge and resources of those established institutions.
It is. And it also helps them to build credibility,
Yeah.
especially in a field as sensitive as nuclear energy.
So they're not just a startup operating in a garage. They're collaborating with some of the leading institutions in the world.
Exactly. And they're not just relying on that external expertise.
Okay.
They're also building their own team of talented individuals.
Right.
The 10K provides detailed biographies of their executive officers and directors,
Oh, wow.
highlighting their experience in the energy and finance industries.
So a team with a diverse range of backgrounds and skills.
Right. And they're committed to good corporate governance.
Okay.
They've established a board of directors with a majority of independent members.
That's a best practice for ensuring accountability and transparency,
It is.
especially for a publicly traded company.
Exactly. They also have a compensation committee that's responsible for overseeing executive pay and benefits, and a nominating and corporate governance committee responsible for identifying and evaluating potential board members.
So it's all about creating a system of checks and balances to ensure that the company is being run responsibly
Yeah.
and in the best interests of its shareholders.
Precisely. Now, remember that Nuclear and Energy University program we talked about earlier?
Uh-huh. The one they're creating to train the next generation of nuclear professionals.
Exactly. Well, they go into more detail about it in the 10K.
Oh, okay.
They're collaborating with several academic institutions to provide students with hands-on experience and that specialized training.
It's a forward-thinking approach to addressing the growing demand for nuclear expertise.
It is.
They're not just relying on the existing talent pool. They're actively cultivating that next generation of nuclear engineers and scientists.
Absolutely. And it's a win-win situation.
Yeah.
It benefits the students, the company, and the industry as a whole.
They're investing in the future.
They are. Which brings us to their financials. As a pre-revenue company, their financial statements look quite different from a mature, profitable business.
Right. They're still in the investment phase, spending money on research and development without any sales to offset those costs.
Right. Their balance sheet shows they have a decent amount of cash on hand. But that's likely to dwindle pretty rapidly as they continue to invest in their various business lines.
They're going to need to raise a lot more capital. And we talked about the risks associated with that. Dilution for existing shareholders, dependence on government funding.
Exactly. And their income statement, as you might expect, shows a net loss for the fiscal year.
Which isn't surprising for a company at their stage of development.
Right. But it is important to look at where their money is going.
Okay.
A significant portion of their expenses went towards research and development.
Okay. That's a good sign.
It is.
It means they're prioritizing innovation.
Right. They also incurred substantial general and administrative expenses,
Yeah.
which is to be expected for a company building out its infrastructure.
Yeah.
And they're spending money on marketing and business development, trying to raise awareness and attract those potential customers.
It's all part of the process of building a new company.
It is. One interesting thing I noticed was a significant increase in their intangible assets.
Intangible assets. What are those?
Things like patents, licenses, and goodwill.
Okay.
This increase suggests that they're investing heavily in intellectual property,
Right.
which aligns with their strategy of becoming a technology leader in the microreactor space.
So they're building a portfolio of valuable assets.
They are. They also disclose their tax position, which is complicated because they operate in multiple jurisdictions.
Right.
And they highlight their commitment to environmental sustainability, which is crucial for a company in the energy sector.
So they're not just focused on profits, they're also considering their environmental impact.
Exactly. And they're not just talking about it, they're taking concrete steps to reduce their carbon footprint.
Yeah, they are really trying to make a difference there. So moving on from the financials, let's talk about the potential applications of their tech. What are they envisioning these microreactors actually being used for?
They seem to be casting a pretty wide net.
They are. Everything from providing clean energy to remote communities and industrial facilities, to powering disaster relief efforts and military operations.
Wow. The portability and the scalability of these reactors make them incredibly versatile.
For sure. I mean, they could even be used for space exploration. Imagine powering a lunar base or a deep space mission with a microreactor.
That is pretty mind-blowing to think about all the possibilities. But they're not ignoring the public perception challenges, are they?
Not at all. They know they need to address those concerns about safety and security head-on. They're investing in R&D to enhance the safety features of their reactors, and they're also working to educate the public about the benefits of this technology. So transparency and building trust are key, especially with nuclear energy.
Absolutely. And their regulatory strategy seems pretty sound. They're engaging with agencies early on, aiming for standardized designs to make licensing easier. All smart moves.
It's a long and complex process, but it seems like they're navigating it thoughtfully.
They are. And they're not just focused on the U.S., they're also tackling the international regulatory landscape, which can be even more challenging.
Global ambitions, not just domestic.
Exactly. Now, one of their most innovative aspects, in my opinion, is their fuel cycle management approach.
You mentioned that before. What makes it so different?
They're not just building reactors. They're aiming to control that entire fuel cycle.
Okay.
From uranium enrichment to waste disposal.
Wow, that is a bold move.
It is. It gives them way more control over their supply chain and reduces their reliance on those third parties.
But that comes with its own set of challenges, right?
Of course. It requires them to navigate a complex web of regulations and develop new technologies. But they're investing in those advanced fuel processing and recycling methods, aiming to minimize waste and boost efficiency.
So a holistic approach to sustainability.
Exactly. It's good for the environment, and it gives them a competitive edge.
No, what about those potential acquisitions they mentioned?
Oh, yeah. They're actively seeking out companies that complement their existing business lines. So whether that's fuel processing, transportation reactor design, or even consulting services they're looking.
So growth through acquisitions?
Exactly. It's a
No.
classic strategy, but it's not without its risks.
Right. Integrating different company cultures can be tricky, and acquisitions can be expensive.
They can. But if they can identify and integrate the right companies, it could really accelerate their growth.
So another calculated gamble.
It is. They're certainly not playing it safe, are they?
They are not. And they're being open about their compensation practices, how they're attracting and retaining that top talent, competitive salaries, stock options, all that.
It's important for investors to understand how that's structured.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, they address that elephant in the room, the cybersecurity threats.
Right. Those can't be ignored these days, especially in an industry like this one.
Yeah.
They're investing in that robust cybersecurity, knowing that it's an ongoing arms race against those who want to cause trouble.
And they're protecting their physical assets, too, not just the digital ones.
Exactly. Security is a multifaceted challenge, and it seems like they're approaching it with the seriousness it deserves.
Okay, so we've dissected their business model, their tech, the risks, their financials. Anything else we've missed?
Well, one thing that really stood out to me was their emphasis on intellectual property. They're really aggressively pursuing patents and other protections for their tech.
It makes sense they want to safeguard those innovations and maintain that competitive edge.
Right. And they're also open to licensing their technology to others, which could generate more revenue for them.
Smart move. They're really covering all the bases. Any final thoughts before we wrap things up for today?
I think it's important to remember that nanonuclear is operating in this rapidly changing energy landscape. The world is really looking for those cleaner energy sources, and microreactors have the potential to play a significant role in this transition.
They do. They offer that mix of scalability, portability, and carbon-free operation. But there are hurdles to overcome, like public perception and the need for robust safety regulations.
Absolutely. It's a complex challenge, but nanonuclear seems determined to navigate it. They believe in the potential of this technology to be transformative, and they're putting their money where their mouth is.
They're not just dreamers, they're doers. And they're not shying away from the hard work and the risks.
That's right. And they're being transparent about it all. They're not trying to oversell the potential or downplay the challenges.
Okay.
They're laying it all out there for investors to see.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Well, it means that you've got the information you need to start forming your own opinions. Is nanonuclear a company you'd consider investing in? Are those potential rewards worth the undeniable risks?
Do your research. Think about your investment goals. And don't be afraid to think critically. This world of microreactors is full of promise, but it's also full of unknowns, and that's what makes it so exciting.
It's a story that's just beginning to unfold, and we'll be here to keep you informed as it develops. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of nanonuclear energy.
It's been a pleasure. And remember, this is just the beginning. Keep an eye on this space, because it's ripe for innovation and disruption. Who knows what the future holds?
That's the beauty of it all, isn't it? The unknown is full of possibilities. Now let's switch gears and talk about something that's crucial for any investor, nanonuclear's financials.
Right. As a pre-revenue company, their financial statements look quite different from a mature, profitable business. They're still in that investment phase, pouring money into R&D without any sales to offset those costs.
Their balance sheet shows a significant amount of cash. On hand, but yeah, that's likely to dwindle quickly as they keep investing in all these different projects.
Right, and we've talked about the downsides of needing to raise more capital dilution for existing shareholders, and maybe even becoming too reliant on government funding.
It's a tough balancing act for sure. What about their income statement?
Well, as you might expect, it shows a net loss for the year, which isn't surprising for a company at this stage. But it's key to see where the money's going. A big chunk went to R&D.
That's at least a good sign. It shows they're prioritizing innovation.
Absolutely. They also had substantial general and administrative expenses, which is normal as they build out the infrastructure. And then there's marketing and business development costs, trying to reach those potential customers.
It all adds up. Makes sense. Anything else in the financials that stood out?
Yeah, the increase in their intangible assets caught my eye. Things like patents, licenses, goodwill. This suggests they're putting a lot into intellectual property, which makes sense with their goal of being a tech leader in this microreactor space.
So they're building a portfolio of valuable assets,
Yeah.
not just physical stuff.
Exactly. And they're pretty transparent about their tax situation, which is complicated because they operate in multiple places. Plus, they highlight their commitment to environmental sustainability. Can't forget that, especially in the energy sector.
So not just chasing profits, but trying to do it the right way. Good to see.
Definitely. Now, switching gears a bit, this is what's got me really intrigued. What are the potential applications for this microreactor tech? I mean, where could it actually be used?
It seems like they've got a pretty broad vision.
They do. They see possibilities all over, providing clean energy to remote areas or industrial facilities, powering disaster relief efforts, even military applications.
Oh, wow. Yeah, the portability and scalability are huge selling points.
Totally. They could even be used in space exploration. Imagine powering a lunar base with a microreactor.
Mind-blowing to think about. But they're not ignoring the public perception hurdles, are they?
Not at all. They know they need to address safety and security concerns head-on. So they're investing in R&D to improve safety features and also working to educate the public about the potential benefits of this tech.
Transparency and trust are so key, especially when it comes to nuclear anything.
Absolutely. And their regulatory approach seems smart too, engaging with agencies early on, aiming for standardized designs to make licensing smoother. Those are good moves.
It's a long process, but they seem to be navigating it well.
They are. And they're not just focused on the U.S. market either. They're tackling the international scene too, which is even more complex.
So global ambitions.
For sure.
Yeah.
Now, one of the most innovative things to me is how they're handling the fuel cycle.
We touched on that before. What makes it so different?
Well, they're not just building reactors. They're aiming to control the whole fuel cycle. From enriching uranium to waste disposal, that gives them a lot more control over their supply chain and less reliance on others.
Bold move. But that's got to come with challenges too, right?
Of course. It means dealing with lots of regulations and developing new technologies, but they're investing in advanced fuel processing and recycling, aiming to minimize waste and make the whole thing more efficient.
So they're walking the walk on sustainability, not just talking about it.
Exactly. Good for the environment, and it gives them a competitive advantage. Now, about those acquisitions they mentioned.
Yeah. Are they seriously looking to buy other companies?
They are. They're actively searching for companies that fit well with what they're already doing,
Right.
whether it's fuel processing, transportation reactor design, even consulting.
So growth through acquisitions, classic strategy, but risky.
It can be. Integrating different companies is tough and it can be expensive. But if they get it right, those acquisitions could really boost their growth.
Another calculated gamble. It seems like they're not afraid to take risks.
Nope, they're going all in. And they're upfront about things like their compensation practices, how they're attracting and keeping talent, competitive pay stock options, all that.
Important for investors to understand how that works.
For sure. And then there's the elephant in the room, cybersecurity.
Yeah, no escaping that these days, especially in this kind of industry.
Right. They're putting money into strong cybersecurity measures, but they know it's a constant race against those trying to cause trouble.
Always staying one step ahead.
Exactly. And they're not just protecting the digital side either. They're thinking about physical security too, recognizing the potential for things like sabotage or even terrorism.
So security on all fronts.
It's a multi-layered challenge, and they seem to be approaching it seriously.
Okay, so we've talked business model, technology, risks, financials. Anything else we've missed?
I think we've covered the main points from the 10K. What are your overall impressions? Is nanonuclear the real deal?
You know, I'm impressed by their vision and their dedication to innovation. They're tackling a really tough problem, and they're doing it thoughtfully. They're not naive about the challenges ahead.
There are definitely a lot of risks, too.
Oh, yeah, tons. They're pre-revenue in a heavily regulated industry. They'll need a ton of capital, and so much is outside their control.
So it's high risk, but potentially high reward.
Exactly.
So we'll have to watch and see how it plays out.
We will. It's a fascinating story for sure. It really is. Well, this has been a great deep dive. We've learned so much about nanonuclear, their tech, their strategy, their goals. Thanks for joining us to explore the world of micronuclear energy.
It's been my pleasure. And remember, this is just the start. Keep your eye on this space because it's full of potential. Who knows what the future holds?
That's what makes it so exciting, right? The unknown is full of possibilities. Thanks for listening, everyone.